Excellent. Okay. So as I said, what I'm going to do today is I want to make this relatively interactive in the second half, but I'm just going to go through and basically just share my process. So I usually anti-presentation person, but I wanted to, today it made sense, I felt, in this specific context to sort of share a lot of screenshots, checklists, step-by-step process. The one thing I would like to do as well, I'm going to share this presentation after, so you literally have a bit of a playbook now to go away with it. Hopefully that inspires you to build your own startup. So how I built this in 18 days. Smart Updates, that is the product that's gone live today. If you haven't checked it out, there's the link at the bottom, smartupdate.es. Second and final ask from me today is going to be please go to Product Hunt and vote for Smart Updates. I think we're currently 15th, got something like 70-something votes, so doing pretty well. It's a great way for me, just the more votes, the more sort of validation of, is this the right idea or not? More exposure helps me make the decision whether to pivot or persist. As we come towards the end of this week and get the sort of early results in, I'm going to talk about how I make that decision in the second half of this presentation. So please go over there, just load it up in the background, Product Hunt, and you'll find Smart Updates there. I'll share the link. Yes, currently 77 upvotes as of 10 minutes ago. It would have been a little bit less, but I've been faffing around with the presentation tools. So going pretty well. And again, Product Hunt, I'll talk about why I've done that, but great way just to get validation, get more eyes on, and sort of ultimately see, like, is this a startup that I should continue with, that I see potential with. From this specific session, both in terms of the content I will share and also the Q&A, I want you to come out with a transparent, actionable playbook, quite high level, right? There's only so much we can get in an hour, but a nice actionable playbook for actually going and building your own no-code startup within, I'd say, under 30 days. I think it's very realistic. Okay, so this is actionable. It's designed to be actionable, and again, the Q&A is there for you to ask specific questions. What I'm going to cover, firstly, how I choose what I call a viable solution. Secondly, building with Bubble, so bubble.io, that's the no-code tool I'm using. Thirdly, how I built Smart Update, so this first of 12 startups I'll be building in 12 months. Where are you at with that? Do I think it's succeeded? Has it failed? Obviously, we're still on launch day, but what are the initial signs there? And then at the end, Q&A. Just briefly before we jump into that, bit on my story. I think this is important to understand why I'm doing this 12 startups in 12 months journey. So my first business was something called Backtracker, and went down that whole startup rabbit hole, right there. Raise investment, try and get featured on Forbes, try and build the next big thing. Don't worry about how we're going to make money. Just raise a load of money, enjoy the status, and see what happens. It burnt in not a very good way. So 2 years later, ran out of money, made sort of every mistake you could think of, but had a lot of experience off the back of that, and ended up sort of going into product and saying, right, great. I know that there's something around entrepreneurship and startups I want to be doing long term. Not quite sure what that is. Let's see whether and when I can come back and have another go at building a business. Then took, let's say, 6-7 years working on various projects of doing a bit of freelancing. Got a real job for a while. Started a blog for a bit with complete lack of focus. Built a small but actually profitable journaling app. Did some product consulting and sort of played around with this HR tool. None of them really committed properly. Didn't really commit properly to any of those products. Right? Or sort of these were short-term things, right? So a bit of spreading energy left, right, and centre. Then in 2020, I remember writing down in my journal, nobody's coming for you, i.e. if I'm not going to go start a business, be focused, get it to profitability, it's just not going to happen. And off the back of that, built a company called Product MBA, which you might have heard of, you might have known me from. I know there's some clients probably on this call from that. Nice level of profitability. Got that down to a lot of hard work at the beginning, but got it down to a nice, comfortable 5-hour workday. Lots of purpose from that. Bootstrapped, i.e. no funding this time, solo founded, and focused on profitability very early on. So did things very differently with that business. And 4 years later, still running that business, but I wanted to jump back into digital. So that's why I've been essentially working on this new journey of building 12 startups in 12 months, right? Going back into digital, like pushing myself, renewing knowledge, right? Getting new knowledge, as well as things have shifted massively in the last 12 months, but really the last 5 years, we've seen massive changes in product. So that's, led me to launching this product, right? This first startup, Smart Updates. So first question I think is really valuable for anyone thinking of starting their own startup is, how do you choose a viable solution? What do I mean by viable in this case? When we think viable, we usually think like, can we actually build it? And that's really important. That's the second part. Right? Can I actually deliver what we're promising? We could promise we build an iPhone for $10, but can we actually go and do it? No, we're not going to be able to do that. Second part of viability that's overlooked is, can it deliver enough value? When we think of concepts like MVP, it's really easy to think like, get something quick and easy out, but it's still got to be good enough, deliver enough value for somebody to actually bother using. So it has to be viable, right? Good enough, delivers enough value, but also we want to make sure we can actually deliver what we're promising. No, to some extent. Right? So, update from Google Chrome. What does that translate to? Right, when we say, okay, great, viable solution, understand the theory of it. For me, that's translated to certain principles. Right? The first one is avoiding, when I'm thinking of building a product now, specifically, right, what's the solution going to be? Firstly, avoiding what I call feature black holes. That might be, for example, with Smart Updates. It would have been awesome to create product updates where we integrate with Jira and Slack and, let's say, Confluence and your Google Docs, right? So it taps into all of your knowledge base. That is a black hole of a feature because it would take potentially months. I'm not particularly technical. Huge value add, and maybe even like the crucial feature, but it's simply one that I'm going to go, there's so much unknown that I'm going to avoid it and try and do something else that can deliver enough value, that i.e. is viable, but that I can actually deliver on. Right? So you're not just lost for like potentially months on specific features. And I've made that mistake before. Second thing is avoiding custom code. So when I'm saying, okay, I want a viable solution, I want to avoid custom code because, I have some dev experience. I think unless you're extremely experienced, again, it's really easy to get stuck, not even just on a feature, but stuck on some really niche thing, like some package update or API call that you have to do from scratch. And you just, even with coding assistance, it's easy to get really, really stuck. So I think unless you are a trained developer, senior level, avoid custom code. Even Tamir Bashkin, someone I've interviewed, he's a solopreneur, has a very successful SaaS business, and is a CTO by training. He will avoid custom code because of the fact that it can be a time drain and uses no code. Thirdly, avoiding lots of features. So trying to be like, okay, is there one feature that I could work on that's really going to move the needle, deliver enough value, rather than trying to do a bit of everything? A great example always is project management tools. Just to get a project management tool in the market, you need a base level, like bread and butter features, a load of stuff like collaboration, different user types, some sort of drag and drop Kanban board, right? This kind of thing. So I'm going to go, I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to play in that market. I'm going to be a bit more strategic and try and, pick one, maybe two features that really add value. And finally, tying all that together, just generally trying to avoid unknowns, right? As many unknowns as possible. Now, we don't know whether a product's going to work out, but we know when we've got like no idea how, okay, shit, we've got this feature idea, like how the hell are we going to build it? That's a bit of a red flag. Okay? Because, again, you can get stuck for weeks or months on these kind of questions. What does that mean? It means you're not pushing something out, getting it in front of customers, seeing whether they're willing to buy it or not, or pay for it or not. Oh, great. So avoiding feature black holes, avoiding custom code, avoiding lots of features, avoiding lots of unknowns. What does that look like in terms of questions that I ask myself? And I think questions that if you are going down the solopreneur, the bootstrapped approach, that you can ask yourself as well. First one, can I build something that structurally exists already that is a perhaps sort of clever sounding way of basically copy the structure of a solution so that you are not building unique code or workflows or API calls if you're doing no code. Example, let's say there's a nice Airbnb template on Bubble that somebody's built. Great. How can we use basically that structure of a marketplace with listings and photos, etc., and two types of users, an owner and a traveler, and apply that in a different context? For example, what if we did like Airbnb for dog owners specifically? Called it obviously something different, not Airbnb for dog owners, but the same concept, different market. Second, can I outcompete on just one thing? For example, Product MBA, it's a bootcamp company I've been running for 4.5 years. We were competing, still are competing against these massive VC-backed companies with all these, usually guys from Google, Facebook, Amazon, etc. We're not going to compete on having high credibility instructors, right? Founder of Stripe or senior product leader at Google. We're not going to compete on that, but we did compete on being hands-on and being way more hands-on than these other companies. And just by focusing on that one area of value, that carved out a specific niche. So I'm looking now for what's one key point of value that I could massively deliver on that would convince people just on that one thing that, yeah, this is worth using, this is worth paying for. And that then translates to maybe one or two features. And finally, can I challenge the current thing? Current things like the current way things are done, like questioning convention. So a really good example of this is Loom, Loom. They challenged the whole concept of communication in work. Initially, right, we think everything done by email or Slack, right, instant messaging. They said, no, communication by video is just better. They're not selling Loom, they're selling communication by video, this whole new way of communicating, a whole new concept. And then by doing that, sort of own this category, became hyper differentiated and basically really stood out. So I'm always looking for these kind of things. Tried it a little bit with with smart updates around, can we create this new thing? Or, the vision of it is that you have this really like dynamic sort of live chat where, let's say I, as a product manager, add loads of info and it's like a 5-page document potentially, but CEO could come and just ask specific questions and say, look, just summarize this for me in 3 bullet points. Or, okay, great, I don't care about 90% of the stuff, but I do care about what's the revenue impact in Q1 next year, for example. Really nice and dynamic, different way of doing it. Questioning convention there. Good. Second part, building with Bubble. So bubble.io, this is the no-code tool that I've been using. Before I jump in on that, in fact, let me just make sure everyone can actually see here, etc., etc. Awesome. Good. Alan, as usual, my handy assistant. Thank you for that. I've got a feeling though you can't see my screen, which is worrying. Okay, not the end of the world. One sec, just make sure that you can in fact see this presentation as I go into sort of the more screen share. This session. Great, this should now work. Good, apologies if you didn't see the slides. Doesn't matter so much up until now. If you didn't, quick reminder to go and vote on Product Hunt. We are doing quite well in there. And as I said, it's not about votes, it's about really getting more exposure. So it really does help. Excellent. So just a reminder of those questions, right? So how do we choose a viable solution? Always trying to think about like avoiding getting stuck whilst creating enough value that people are actually going to use it. Questions to ask yourself: can I build something that structurally exists already? Can I outcompete on just one thing? Can I challenge the current thing, the current convention? Good. I'm just going to stay in this mode, not full screen. I just don't want to screw this up. Again, sorry, apologies for joining late. I'm on a backup Mac this week and I'm traveling, so none of my usual setup, but shouldn't matter as long as you can hear and see. Good, excellent. building with Bubble. So just some lessons from working with Bubble. I want to talk about principles and sort of high-level guidance, and then specifically, I will talk about exactly what I did to build smart updates. And again, I want to make this as actionable as possible. So building with Bubble. First thing that is really powerful with Bubble is tutorials. I wouldn't have recommended using Bubble even 2 years ago, but they put a lot of work in to make what was a very complex tool relatively. You can get to grips with it with a few weeks of focused learning. Specifically, 3 things I really recommend. First thing is the Bubble Academy. So if we go on the bubble.io/academy, got a screenshot there on the right, there are some really nice detailed tutorials of things like how to build an Instagram clone with no code, how to build an Airbnb app. There are some new ones coming out which are very good, which I've been using. For example, how to build an app with OpenAI's API. Great. Here's one from the founder, how to build a to-do list app in 10 minutes. I really recommend going through those because it's so nice to see something, to actually create something yourself. And the tutorials are very well structured. And also it's do it 2 or 3 of these. You're really going to understand the principles. And like, oh, that's how I manage databases. That's how I connect an API, etc. These kind of core structures behind any application. Really great way to do it. Second thing is YouTube. Just simply Google stuff, right? Or YouTube stuff. If you're like, okay, shit, I need this toggle so that I can toggle like pricing between monthly and yearly. Just go on YouTube and search for how to build a toggle. Third thing on there I completely forgot is if not invaluable, is ChatGPT's. I'll share these links after, by the way. Again, sorry, setup's not great today. ChatGPT has a GBT built specifically as a Bubble Auto Copilot. It's unbelievably valuable for me the last few weeks. I'll type in anything I want to do, be quite specific, right? So say, for example, okay, I want to display only an update created by the user and not share that publicly. How do you do that? Step by step. Very, very simple. Don't always do that. Obviously, you want to understand the core principles, but it makes you 10x faster on many tasks. And final thing, there are templates you can use. So, out of the box, just grab Airbnb clone. Great. You can just copy and paste that, and it's pretty much up and working in most cases straight away. I don't recommend just jumping in with that, but using it as a playground and going, can I experiment or go, oh, interesting, could I add some feature or change something, just to play around and tinker a little bit. It's just a nice way to apply something and see the results immediately. Like, does it work, does it not? And Bob was very good at that. It's going to show you if there's issues, you can preview, etc. So tutorials, unbelievably valuable. A couple of weeks on that, you're going to be at a really good base level of knowledge. And templates, as I said, there's not millions of them. There are hundreds of them, and some of them are really, really good. But I wouldn't recommend jumping straight in. Good to sort of go through the tutorials and then just play around with different templates to see how they work. And also, you can get stuck a little bit if you don't understand the core setup, right? If they're using things like reusable components, or some of them are just sloppy, right? They look nice in a template, but they're not actually well structured. What do you need to know? What do you need to know to really build any app in Bubble? I'd recommend actually this checklist. You can take a screenshot, or I will share this. I'll share this with the newsletter. In fact, on Friday, these slides. Core building blocks. You need to understand. Sorry, this is very granular, by the way. But again, if you want to build a no-code startup, you need to know this stuff. What do you need to know? You need to understand first the user interface, right? How do you put things on the screen and structure them properly? Part of that, I would recommend going through the material. I've got a design background, so that sort of helps here, but go through material.io, material design. It's basically the design language created by Google as guidelines for any developers or designers. This is tried and tested stuff. roughly what spacing should you have between things, what text sizes, what kind of color contrast. It's not rocket science, and if you read through that documentation, you're going to be better than 95% of the internet. Okay, so go through that as well if you're a complete noob to user interface. Or also you can just follow the guidelines you see in the tutorials. Right, so what I've got, you'll see the screenshot on the right, that is Bubble's interface, that's the no-code tool. I didn't reinvent the wheel with that, right? I'm using similar styles to many of the tutorials there. Secondly, responsive design, right? How do things change on mobile or different screen sizes? For me, desktop app for smart updates, not such a big deal, but the landing page needs to be, people should be able to sign up on mobile and on desktop, for example. So responsive, how do things change based on screen size? Thirdly, workflows. So this is basically how we handle data in different ways. Workflow could be something simple, like if button is clicked, go to page 2, for example. Or it could be more complex, where it's saying, okay, if I create a comment, when you click post comment, like what happens? Where are we saving it? Is it attached to a user? Is it attached to, in my case, an update, for example? Like what happens with that data and how are we structuring that? How does it get stored in the database? What happens if we change it, for example? Okay, so workflows is basically what happens, how we're passing data and actions around. Fourth, data and option sets. Basic understanding again of like how does data interact with each other. Easy example, if you're non-technical, we have, let's say, a data point called an update. An update might have a title, images, some text involved, but an update is also, so that's let's say a data set. That is also part of a user, right? Because a user creates an update. An update is, let's say, a product update is within that user's account in some way. So just understanding these relationships, for me, it comes with a bit of trial and error as well. I'm just going like, oh shit, I structured this in the wrong way. Maybe I need to take a step back and change it. That's fine as well. But I think, product 2 for me, I will be planning the data out more carefully. Option sets is sort of data that will be stored within the app. So for example, it would be pricing options, this kind of thing. I'm not going to go into it, but just that's what you need to understand. Things like set state. So how do we do dynamic changes on the page? That might be, in this example, if you click account, it's going to show you a different section there. If you click customization, it's going to show you a different section. Right? So sort of dynamic changes. Things like URL param. So how do we store data in a URL? So for example, if you create an update, that's going to have its unique URL, a string of lots of different numbers or letters, or both, to go. That's how you can visit that specific update. Within it's got its own link, for example. A few other things you can do with it. I won't go into now, but just understand that concept. API connector, basically, how do we pull in different APIs like Stripe, OpenAI? There are loads of these pre-built, by the way, as well. So it sounds scary, not too scary in practice. And then finally, things like data privacy. So, okay, if again, good example with product updates, there might be things that we share publicly, like an update that I want to share with my boss. He's not the creator, but he can still see that. But obviously, not everyone should be able to see all of my product updates or all of my company data and information, for example. Like, how do we handle those kind of data privacy / access questions? Okay, boring, because if you're not doing this right now, but that's a pretty comprehensive checklist. You learn those things, you can build most apps, right, for 80% of your ideas, as long as you're not going too visionary. If you understand these core concepts. Relate to this as well. Many of you are going to go, great, cool, yeah, I'm never going to do this stuff. I just want to be clear. I am not a technical whiz, right? I have 10 years experience in startups. That absolutely helps in terms of coming up with concepts. But, I did maybe 2 or 3 Bubble tutorials 3 years ago so I could teach the basics of this stuff to product MBA students. Worked on a couple of small projects based on the tutorials, but pretty limited. I've got a little bit of front-end experience, but really I've just been using Bubble, right? Not other no-code tools. I've experimented with them, but I've sort of come back to this as realizing this has the most potential. Again, solo founder, so I don't have a team or someone to sort of chat to about this stuff. No funding, so I'm not paying a developer to do this. I am doing all of the development myself. And also this summer, right, I've been spending loads of time looking after my son, which is great, 4 hours a day. But that cuts into the time that I've got to work on this stuff. And I've got Product MBA running in the background and Break Free, another business that I started earlier this year. Right, so you can do this stuff. It's just about being focused when you're doing it and being pretty structured. Right, again, learn these core building blocks, do some tutorials, and then just start testing out your own ideas. Okay, so no excuses here. And related to this as well, I don't think of these limitations as a bad thing. I think these are positive constraints, because what it does is it makes you go from, oh my God, I could build anything, and then building nothing, to saying, okay, well, what can I actually do based on the constraints? Some solutions are going to take too long to build, so I'm just going to avoid certain ideas. Some solutions are too technical to do with Bubble and the API connector. Great, well, I'm just not going to do them. That's fine. There are lots of ideas out there. Thirdly, by not having stakeholders and self-funding, I can pivot quickly. This week, by Friday, I'm going to decide, do I pivot or persist with smart updates? And no one, there's no one there to tell me yes or no to do that. And finally, by bootstrapping, I'm charging up front. Now, that's a big question mark, because obviously people like to try products before they buy, but also, if a product offer is really compelling, they're going to pay for it. So by charging up front, I'm not going to be in this gray zone of, am I going to convert 1% or 3% of my users to paid customers? I can get that pretty quickly and upfront, and then say either pivot or persist from each idea. So I actually see it as a positive and quite liberating, doing this sort of bootstrapped solopreneur approach with no-code SaaS products. Final reminder, I'm going to drop this in, I think once more today. If you haven't already, please do go to Product Hunt, and you'll find smart updates on there. We're doing pretty well. I think we're about 50, but please give it an extra boost, because it's going to help me decide, should I carry on with this or not, the more exposure that this product can get. So please do that. It will take you literally 1 minute to do, and massively appreciated. Right. How about smart updates on Bubble? So I'm going to go quite granular here for the next 5 minutes, and then I think we're going into Q&A after that, if I remember correctly. Now, really important, when this is when I was thinking of doing this journey of 12 startups in 12 months. The first one, I didn't overthink what I was going to work on. The next one's not overthink. I didn't think too much into it. I felt, okay, I sort of know this space. I know there's some need around product updates. But what I really wanted to do is to build the foundations for any SaaS product, and also gain experience doing that, right? And doing it in one place. Because if you think about it, 80% of these products are basically the same thing. There is some sort of homepage, there is some sort of sign up, there is payment at some point. You create some sort of data, like an update or a post to Instagram. You edit and save data in some way, and you view data in some way. It might be on a dashboard, it might be a share page, it might be a newsfeed, for example. And you've probably got some sort of settings. So my thinking was, okay, look, I'm not going to worry about the outcome so much, but I want to make sure I've got really nice foundations that I can basically copy and paste that structure, like the framework, and use it for most of the products that I'll be building over the next 12 months. And again, checklist for you. Take a screenshot if you want. Left-hand side. Okay, what are those reusable elements? It's pretty much what I talked about. Plus styles. Right? So having reusable styles, like specific, you don't just randomly make up what a header looks like on every page, or body text, or a button. Like, you store those styles and you reuse them, you be consistent with them. Landing page, so sections, specific sections that I know help convert effectively. So what does that mean? It means our hero section, big text, value proposition. You can see a screenshot on the right, in fact. A button, call to action, some sort of nice product photo next to it. We might have the how it works section, the 3 benefit, testimonials, call to action, video demo, etc. Okay, so landing page with all those elements for mobile and web. Third, sign up and login. You're going to need that. You're going to need Stripe API that you can do pre-built or custom, do it yourself. I did it myself because I wanted to really understand all of the pieces. So that's accepting payment. create and save data in some way, for example, an update, retrieving data in some way, viewing an update, privacy we've talked about before, and depending on what you're going to be doing, not most, because I think using AI for the sake of AI is not that helpful, but I'm sure there'll be a few more of these products where I'm going to be using the OpenAI API. Okay, so pulling in some sort of AI to the product. Final part of building for me was also this was sort of something I sort of thought about without realizing what I was doing, but what I refer to this as 80-20 templates. So essentially, when I'm thinking about ideas now, particularly as I'm sort of early, relatively inexperienced with Bubble, I want to build things related to what already exists, like the Airbnb for dog owners example. So I'm going to try and use the existing tutorials in some way to reduce build time and just getting stuck on something. So great, is it better to use OpenAI or Grok or whatever, Claude or whatever they're called? Like all these different AI tools. I don't know. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm going to use OpenAI because there's a tutorial on how to integrate OpenAI's API. Same with Stripe. Log in. Yeah, exactly. What I talked about before. Just things that are not going to be massive unknowns for me. I'm going to get really stuck on something. Do I need to build one product a month? No, of course not. That's just a random number I put on myself, 12 startups in 12 months. But I like the constraint because it's making me make these tough decisions. For example, I looked at doing a more complex OpenAI integration, got stuck on it for 2 days, probably could have got it done on day 3, but I said, you know what? I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's a core feature, so just didn't embed it. So that's just an overview of the process, right? How do I actually build it? Basically going through these tutorials, building all these core building blocks, understanding how those actually worked, and went, okay, so that's sort of similar to how I would do this based on the tutorial, that kind of thinking, just experimenting. And speaking a lot with the ChatGPT Bubble Copilot. And as I said, the main goal for me really under the surface was this, right? Getting this really nice foundation in place. So now I can spend much less time building and much more time thinking about, doing product discovery, really thinking about what the hell I should be building rather than how do I build it. Final topic, smart updates. Where are we at? So sort of, again, I think we're about 8-10 hours into launch date. Has it succeeded or failed? What's my sense so far? Now, hopefully you read the article on this, and if not, please do. But how I'm defining success with the project. What I'm looking for is a key metric of dollar spend per unique website visitor, specifically a benchmark, just taken from Mark Liu, who's a really successful solopreneur, of 50 cents per unique website visitor. If you can get that much money from a unique visitor, you get the sense that as you scale it can be a profitable business. I'm using that as a benchmark. The other goal I want to achieve is get to $500 within 30 days of a product launch. Right? Why 500? We're probably then looking at, depending on the product pricing, it could be, it could be 10 customers, it could be 50 customers, depends how I'm pricing. Getting a sense, okay, there's enough people there to give me some decent data to say, yeah, this isn't just a fluke one-off or like a couple of random 2-3 people, but there's something there. There's a trend there. Enough people are willing to pay for it to give me the green light to commit more time to that. That might mean carrying on building it in the background whilst launching another product or going full on with it, for example. Okay. As of this call, just before I started, we had one sale in today, which is great. Very hard to get people to hand over money. Not much, right? So $19, that's a single sale. In terms of website visitors, analytics won't give me the data till tomorrow, but we're seeing about 10 people every 30 minutes. That's been quite consistent. So I'm making the assumptions, maybe 200, 300 people that are going to visit the site today. So good. Enough people to get a sense of, and for sure, a lot of them are going to be non-relevant. People that are just sort of curious, right, on the newsletter. They're like, I like Henry, I'm just going to support him. No idea what he's selling, but hey, there'll be a bit of that, but generally there's enough people there for me to get a sense of, is this compelling? Right? Are people willing to sign up? Are they willing to actually pay for the thing or not? So pretty low. One sale, good. That's always good to see, but pretty low unique revenue basically per visit. So looks around 0.09. So it's looking like this is not compelling enough to carry on with, right? And this is what's really interesting. It is really easy now to go, oh my God, there's potential. People are interested. It was high up on Product Hunt. It got a sale. I get more, by the way, throughout the rest of the day. But it is really easy to sink more time into a product in the hope that if only we had this feature, it's going to get into product market fit. If only we had this other feature, people are going to be willing to pay for it. My experience teaches it's easier just to try a new idea out. Wait till you see signs of product market fit. I saw that with Product MBA. I saw that a little bit with Breakfree. And by the way, that's, I've had maybe 7 or 8 other failed products, right? So those are not the only ones. You start to sort of see the signs in it. So in my view, my likely conclusion, and I'll share that on Friday when I really review the data, is there's not enough strong demand to say this is something worth carrying on with, or I'm not willing to make the commitment to the kinds of features like Slack integration, Jira integration, that I think could become real black holes over time. I want to avoid that. So final thing before we go into Q&A, key lessons from this first startup. First one is go smaller niche, smaller problem. Right? Sort of pick broadly product managers, product updates. People do product updates in very different, nuanced ways. So going really nice and niche, following my own advice there. Again, I didn't overthink it this time, that's fine, but I do want to next time. Secondly, pick the opportunity carefully. So really thinking about revenue potential from the area I'm looking at. Thirdly, I do usually do this, but again, this time I wanted to just jump into Bubble, but I'm really going to spend time in Figma just getting it prototyped properly, detailed. Before even going to Figma, though, validating that, right? Getting the landing page out, getting early sign up, seeing is there demand there. I did do this 2 weeks ago. I think we only had about 11 sign ups, so I was pretty sure this wasn't going to be a home run, but that's fine. Again, just going through the process. Next time, rather than spending 4 weeks on building, 2 weeks at least on discovery, I think I'm just going to do a 1 week sprint for building and then 1 week focused on launch. Like a lot of work on launch. Next thing, loading up future ideas early. So for some ideas, really doing a bit of prep work. So I've got an idea around like helping like a home base for product coaches. Why not start talking to them next week? Maybe build the thing in 8 weeks, for example. So start that sort of process a bit earlier on. With Bubble, be really strict in terms of what I'm building. The first one, I was like, oh, this is cool. I think I'm going to use this in future products. I'm just going to build it anyway. Don't need to do it because ultimately, unless people are paying for the product, it's a waste of time. Okay, so being much stricter next time. And finally, also just remembering that every rep is invaluable. I've already had loads of product ideas from just doing this experience once. So, my advice to you would just build something, anything, doesn't matter what it is. You're going to learn a lot and then sort of go and iterate from there. Good. I'm going to stop sharing. I will also, time for Q&A. So if you've got any questions, again, apologies for the sort of slightly messy format today. I'm on a 2014 MacBook Air. I'm traveling, so you can probably see from the family photos, visiting family. They're not ideal, but hopefully that was valuable. As I said on Friday, I'm going to share those slides. You've got that checklist and basically a nice actionable guide you can go through and follow this stuff.